Alright, so guys, I'm going to remove the bearings out of this head tube right here. I'm going to show you the tools that I'm using. You can use other tools, but you know, this is the proper tool for it. So I'm going to use this. Knock the top one out already. This is a park tool. It's a bicycle tool, but it's the RT1. There's a side for you right there. RT1. This has kind of got a flange spring set here that when you push it in, so I'm going to knock out the bottom one here. You push it in and you're just going to pull it up until it just clicks. You'll hear it. All right. Now this one's got two edges in it, so you want to make sure you get it just enough where it just pops in the first set. Where so you're on the bearing itself. Okay. All right, so now I'm on it. So what I'm going to do here is just take this and the goal here is if you're going to use something else like a pipe or something, you want to make sure that you're hitting it out even and that you don't rotate the race because it'll damage the head tube. All right, and we're almost all the way out here. All right, and that's out. Do the same thing for the top. All right. All right, so pressing the bearing races in, I'm going to be using another park tool. All right, it's a bearing press. This one is HHP-2. It's also a park tool. I'll show you how this works. So first off, when you're putting these in, I'm using for this kit. Now this is the all balls kit for the conversion that I'm doing. All right, so this kit, and this is the 2014 GSXR front forks on a 1982 GL, and this is the part number that I'm using here. This is for the top bearings. So I have the bearing race here. Okay, these are tapered bearings that are going in, so make sure you set them in there properly. So they're going to go like this, right, with the fatter part going in, like that. Now, in order to use the tool, I'm going to have to use a washer to help fit it in. So it's going to be, it'll be set up like that. All right, just like that. Now I'm going to put a little bit of grease on here. I'm using some Super Lube. It's just synthetic grease. Help it slide in nice and easy. On the bottom side looks like this. It's got a release. So when I put it through the bottom, it's just going to sit in there like that. Alright, so now what I'm going to do first is get this bearing set in there as evenly as I can. So basically you set it all up, you get it nice and even. You got the bottom one flat against this, and you just spin this on it until it goes all the way down. Just about all the way in right there. Because I'm having to use this washer, it's a little bit, there we go. So now I'm dead on it here. I'm just going to squeeze it all the way in. Making sure it's going in even. All right. All right, top one is in. You can do the same thing on the bottom. Just flip the whole tool over and do it on the bottom. All right, so for the next process, we got to change the race that's on the triple. So there's another tool for that. This is the crown race puller. This is CRP-1. All right, from Park Tool. This has like blades on the bottom of it. See, they move, and they're going to go just underneath the bearing race on the triple. Alright, so you get them set up. And then you turn the adjusters in. And it will wedge itself in between the race and the triple, okay? So all I'm doing here is just tightening these in. You want to make sure you get them good and tightened in there so that they're underneath it. Alright, so then when you got those tight, then you're going to take this and just spin this down. And this is going to press on the top of the stem and help pull them off. Alright, so now we make contact with it. We're going to hold the tool and just rotate it. So I'm just tightening it. Okay, you can see it, you can hear it pulling off of there. Alright, see a little space in there. As soon as it comes up a little bit, I'm going to tighten these a little more, see if they can be tightened anymore. If not, we can keep pulling it. See if you can watch it. Alright. Alright, it's about off right there. Alright, and then we take it off. There we go, removed. So now the trick is going to be, what spacer do we need on the triples to make it fit inside of here good? Because you're going to have a distance. Now there's companies that make stems that you can push the stem out and replace it. You may need to get a new stem depending on what kind of setup you're doing. I think this stem length is going to be pretty good here. But this is what we're going to do. So you have to determine how much room you have out of the bottom of here, because there has to be enough room for the triple to turn without the bottom of it here hitting the head tube, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the bearing that we have that's going to be pressed onto the bottom. Alright, and I'm just going to stick it up where it belongs, right in there. And I'm just going to look at it, and I have probably about a ½ millimeter of space. So if I just stick that on there now, it's gonna be rubbing on here. So I got to take the washers that come with the kit. This is the number for the lower bearing that I'm using. So first off, it's a pretty thick washer right here. I'm going to take that washer. Alright, take this washer, put it on the bottom of the bearing, put it back up in there. And see what we got. And we are just barely clearing right there. I think we might get some contact, but I don't want to have it sticking out too far, because then I'm going to be sacrificing it up here, okay? So putting it in right there. Probably just, yep, yeah, you can see it right there. You see how it's just sticking out past it. Now we also have the dust seal that's going to go on it. Alright, so here's our dust seal. Got a little more space there. Put that together. Looking at right there. And see what we got without even having it in there. Okay, now you can see how much. Now that's going to work. Alright, because now we're below where we need to be. Alright guys, so to knock the bearings onto the stem, you saw me getting the right size there for the washer. Now the problem with the GL head tube is that there's that long gap below the bearing. So if I just take the bearing and stick it in there and I have my spacer that I need against the, like on the bottom right here, and then the seal and then the bearing, okay, the seal will get jammed inside of the head tube and it won't operate smoothly. So you can see the problem, how this fits together. There's another seal inside of here, okay, the inside seal right there, that fits up against this tightly right here. Okay, so when you have this up into the head tube, the outside part turns. All right, when you're turning this, that's it inside there, and you're turning like this here, this part here. This is the part that's going to turn with the, when you turn the steering, the handlebars. So if this rubber right here, the seal, is jammed inside of that tube, it's not going to operate smoothly, and I got to figure out something for that, because that's just not going to work. So let me see what I can do here. We trim off the thin little strip around the edge. See how that works. All right, so I have to trim that section off right there, the middle lip, using a pair of old school hairdresser scissors, nice and sharp. I cleaned it up because you want this to be right up against the good bearing, you know. You want it to be sealed up against the bearing so that it gives you a good seal. So when I do it like this, I'm able to put it up in there. Now it just barely touches the side, so I won't get any drag. So now I'm happy. All right, so back to it. I'm going to put the spacer that we're going to use. I'm going to put the spacer on first. Then we're going to put the seal. All right, just the flat side facing down. All right, and then the bearing. Now make sure you grease the bearing up real good. So I'm going to go ahead and just go off screen and grease this all up for you. Make sure you pack it good with grease before you go sticking it up in there. You can put it on first and then put grease on it. It don't really matter. I've already greased the bottom part here of the shaft so that it slides on good. And then I'm using a crown raise tool. Okay, and this is the CRS1. When you put this on, there's different sizes. This one fits perfectly without it, so I'm not going to need anything. But basically, you're going to take this here, sit it on a piece of block like this, so that you don't knock the stem out of the bottom, and you're going to just tap it on there. So let me get this all greased up, and then we'll throw it on. All right, so I got the bearing all greased here, ready to go on. Going to put the tool on. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the seal. I'm just going to pull it up and make sure that the seal is in place where it needs to be, so that you don't knock it on there crooked. Okay, you can push this thing on so that it kind of knocks the bearing down and it's not on the seal properly. You don't want to do that. So we're going to go ahead and tap this on. Just until it bottoms out. You'll hear it. All right, there you go. All right, just go put it on the bike and see where we're at. All right, so putting this in here. All right, sits in there like that. Then we got the bearing and the dust seal. This is not greased up. I still got to weld this, so I'm just keeping the grease off for now, but I'm just putting it together for you guys. So that goes together like that. Now with this, the way that this bearing is right here, it sits up high on there. I don't know what the deal is there, but that's all the way in. So that's going to sit down like that. On top of that goes the first nut. And this is the nut that adjusts it, okay? So this is the one that you're going to get your snugness from here. Now here's, I think, where we're going to run into a problem. We have the spacer right here, and then the lock nut's supposed to go on. Well, there's really no room for that lock nut. The threads are not coming up far enough. So nothing's going to lock this on. This is where an aftermarket stem will do you right, because you knock it in there, it gives you extra length right here. So the bearing is in a good place. There's just not enough thread coming through in order to get that lock nut on there. If we run no washer, it can lock on like that with no washer, but you're only biting by like 2 threads there. Not too comfortable with that. And then the top triple will go on there. So then your top triple goes on here, washer, and then the star nut from the jigsaw on the top here. So now let's talk about this. We're doing a conversion here, okay? So things are not going to be perfect. With this conversion right here, here they are. This is the, you know, the GSXR forks. The nut on the top here is not on all the way. See that? Because of the spacing that we have. The lock nut that you already saw, the lock nut, I can't get the washer in between there. So there's a washer up here. If we take that washer out, I can get this nut down all the way so it's flush in the top. And that will probably work fine. You know, when you put all the stuff together and you clamp these triples, they're not going to slide. I don't know. I'm not too happy with that setup right there. If we get rid of the top, if the lock nut is not on there, all right, and we adjusted this to our tension, drop this down onto there. Put a washer in the top nut without the center lock nut. And use this top one to lock the two together. Would that be okay? I don't know. I'm going to have to give some thought to this, but because I feel like, you know, when I get this thing to where I want it, I want to be able to lock it down. As soon as you move this, it's going to turn that top one loose. See that? So if we put everything on here, maybe with the forks up in here, tighten this one from underneath, and then snug the top one on, torque that on so that it holds it. I like having a lock nut on there. But, I mean, look at the spacing up in there. Can you guys see that? Alright, that race is all the way down in there. Okay, that's bottomed out, the race. And then the bearing's sticking up over that, then the seal's not doing anything because of the way that that is right there. And this is all together like it's supposed to be. And these are the old ball bearing kit that's supposed to work. So, all right, guys. So this is what I did for now. I got the triple set up. Now this right here, you saw how it was before with that big gap, and I didn't like the way that that looked. So, and this is where the seal sits when you have the regular setup. This right here is the bottom part of the factory nut off of the GL. Kind of see right there where that little flange with those little marks are right there. Those are to hold that on there. So what I did was gently separated it from this nut. And then that fits around the top part of the bearing nicely with no problem. And with that on there, okay, I put the lock washer over the nut. So instead of having 2 lock nuts on there, because there's just not enough room, I put this lock washer, and this lock washer has a little tab right there. All right, so what that does is when this rotates, when the whole triple, just down here, when this whole triple rotates, this can turn separately, and it won't turn the nut at all, because that washer is in between the two, and the washer is going to stay in place. So this can slide on the washer and it won't loosen it. So then when we get everything together, all right, with the top nut here, when we get this in place, get the forks set in the trees completely, I'll be able to tighten this down, and I'm not worried about anything coming loose now. We got perfect clearance in there with the seal. You remember we adjusted the seal to fit in there, and then with this thing, all right, and there we go. Should be no problem. So time to move on. I'm going to get this welded up here and put the bracket for the stops and the bracket for the stabilizer on here. So the stabilizer right there, and the brackets, the piece I'm making is going to come out, so it'll just work as stops. So far, that's what I'm planning now. When I start laying that out and marking it, I'll see I may run something across the back right here. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's it for the fork install. But hopefully this gives you an idea of what's involved in this, and it helps you out. Please hit the like button and subscribe for me, and stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next week.